There's a mesmerizing spirit that's involved with all this. There's a sinister force that's involved with all this. Hey friends, this is Brandon Spain, and you're listening to the Unrefined Podcast, where we unravel mysteries, share perspectives, and navigate the rich landscapes of the seen and unseen together. We would love for you to connect with us on social media. You can find those links and how to subscribe to our members-only exclusive portal by visiting unrefinedpodcast.com. Now, for this week's episode. All right. We got the boys in the house, Lindsy Waters and BT Wallace.
Hey, guys.
Hey, guys.
Hey, yeah. We have got a show today for you guys, man. Wow. It's not really a lighthearted kind of show. It's going to go down some dark tunnels and some dark holes, but I believe that you'll benefit from it. I believe you'll be edified from it, and I believe that it'll push you to the gospel and push you to prayer. Today, we're going to dive into an interesting topic. We've been hitting Hollywood a lot lately. We started with Laurel Canyon, and then we've hit some other things out there. And we just kind of feel like that, at the very least, that Hollywood and Los Angeles, and actually, ironically, the City of Angels, seems to be, at the very least, the propaganda arm for what is happening in the United States, definitely, and probably in the world, I would dare venture to say. We're going to explore another head of this Leviathan. So, what we're going to talk about today are the cults of Hollywood celebrities. And let me unpack that a little bit before we dive right in. We're not talking about Hollywood celebrities in cults. We're talking about Hollywood celebrities that, either willing or unwilling, have cults that have, what's the word I'm looking for, guys? Amassed around them, congregated around them. That's a good church word.
That works.
Yeah, congregated, that because that's what it is, and we'll get more into that. So we're going to go through 3 artists that you all know, and I'm slated to go first. We're starting with the present, and we're going to work our way back through history. So we have 3 artists today, and each one of us are going to kind of dive in to those artists. And I drew the shortest straw. It was chosen for me. And I get the joy of Taylor Swift. Woo! Give me some sound effects there, BT. Woo!
Have nothing.
You don't have nothing. It's okay. I sprung it on you, man.
At this moment, he knew.
No, not that one. That one is too unrefined. Edit that out, Zadie. Anyway, so I get the shortest straw, which is okay because it was actually really easy to do because hers is so obvious. The other guys had to do deeper dives, and theirs are a little bit on the DL, so to speak. But Tay, yeah. And before we get started with that, I just want to talk about the dynamics of a cult, not occult. Southerners, it's hard. We slur our words, so we sound like we're saying occult. Are you a member of a cult? Anyway, the dynamics. And y'all chime in here. What are some of the dynamics of a cult or a cult-like following? I would say the first would be loyalty. And maybe loyalty is not the right word. Maybe that's...
devotion. There's a good word for it.
Devotion,
Yes.
yeah. Something that you would place an idol, so to speak. And it's all in our culture. We have American Idol. We have idolatries thrown around. And then we say, oh, we're not like those ancient Israelites, those ancient Mesopotamians, and we don't worship idols. Yeah, right. What are some other cult-like characteristics do you guys think when you were going through these people that kind of really stood out to you?
Charismatic leader, obviously. A leader who can really draw in the crowds.
Well, and I think in our 3, they were charismatic and good-looking.
Yeah.
Right.
Going back to Charlie in our last one, that's Charles Manson for y'all out there. He was not maybe when he's younger he's nicer looking, but he was not a very nice looking guy with a big swastika on his forehead. But he still exuded a charismatic dimension about him, which that'll lead us to the sinister force aspect, which we'll go to, which BT will probably cover. But these people are charismatic in a sense of almost a Galatians chapter 2, they bewitch. And I love that terminology. The Greek word is the word we get the word basilisk from, but it's based on that root word. And it basically means evil eye, or to be turned to stone and made cemented in with the worship. It was mostly used for the evil eye, which we all know what that is. And yeah, a bewitching. Any other characteristics you would consider like occult behavior? Anything we missed? We got devotion. We got charismatic personality.
Well, what I had picked up was it seemed to be all about belief, right? These individuals seem to be experts, or at least pseudo-experts in a specific field. People were drawn to, say, the anti-establishment. Well, when you're drawn to the anti-establishment, these individuals with this charisma can come and grasp a hold of that, drive it into the next level, and what happens is people see a vision that's bigger than what they've seen before, and it thrives in this future, this ideal, this utopic idea that these charismatics bring.
Yeah.
I would say also this kind of insider, I don't know how to put it into one word, but this kind of deal where the leader's like, hey, it's not safe out there. You need to stay in here. I'm the only one you can trust. And
fear.
And
fear-based.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, they're like their own secret societies. They got their own wink, wink, nod, nod going on.
Yeah.
Esotericism, yeah.
Well, and they have their own jargon. Like with mine is with Taylor, which I'm about to get into, or they're Swifties. They I don't know if Tay-Tay is an endearing term that they call her, or if that's her detractors. Y'all might know better than me. I don't know, but I call her Tay-Tay. But yeah, that's a good point, Lindsay, because it's like they get you in with love bombing, and then they keep you in with fear bombing. And I don't even know if that's a word, but I just coined it because they do. They bomb you with fear. All right, well, let me dive into Miss Taylor Swift. She has, if you've paid attention to popular culture, an immense influence and an immense fan base. And it made this weird, she did country, I think, for a while. And then when she switched to pop, it was like it just bloomed and it exploded. And it was just really weird. And that can happen in our culture with social media, viral and all that type of stuff. But it was just really interesting that she went from zero to hero. And she wasn't a zero as a country star. She was popular, but she wasn't nearby as popular as she is become as a pop star. And watching that evolution, and I know the other two guys that they're going to talk about. That the same similar type thing happened to them too. It was almost an overnight. They go from nobodies to somebodies, and it's really kind of fascinating. We talked about the characteristics of a cult, and there's really something fascinating out there that I found, you guys. There's actually a Reddit channel is actually for ex-Swifties, and I just got on there and I just read a lot of the stuff, and it just blows me away that there's normal people that aren't even Christians necessarily like us to have the Christian worldview that are seeing that this is actually a cult, that they're following a pop star, and it's actually become very cultic. I have a story that was near and dear to me. I have a rock performer who, I don't know his soul or anything like that, but he seems like a nice guy. He seems like a great guy. And he was just jabbing on Taylor a little bit about her supposedly not singing and her body doubles and stuff like that. Because supposedly when she goes to Europe, she's not always there. It's her double and it who she sings for her, he lip syncs for her. And supposedly it's been caught a few times. I haven't seen the video evidence of it, but it's out there. And so he's made a dig about it. And then the Swifties came out in force, and they use social media to just cancel people and dox people. They'll do that too, that's ultimately doxing. For you guys out there don't know what that is. That's when they reveal like where you live, your phone number, all your personal information out there for anybody to accost you, basically. So anyway, he came back and made another. He took it to the next level and just made another smart comment. It's David Grau. I can say it because it's public knowledge. And he made another comment, and then they came out, and he had a drummer, part of the Foo Fighters. His name was Taylor too, and he died. And these vicious Swifties came out and just basically said, "Oh, well, at least our Taylor is still alive." They just drilled into this just with heartless, mean comments, just stuff that people shouldn't say. And I know it's keyboard warriors, and it's they're hiding behind social media and all that kind of stuff. But we have gotten to a place in our society where people can say stuff like that. Anyway, but that to me just furthers the cult-like nature of what it is, because that's what happens when you leave a cult, that you get shunned. Or if you go against the cult, just enter into the L. Ron Hubbard cult. And I'm not going to say its name on here, but the L. Ron Hubbard organization. You go after them or expose them, and man, the lawyers come by the SUV dozens to squash it. Unless you're South Park, they get a skate, which is really cool, I think. But anyway, you get canceled really quick and get sued. And this time though, she doesn't have to take legal action. She just lets her adoring fans take care of it for her. And to have that kind of sway and power over the number, you guys, we're not talking about like thousands. We're talking about millions of people, millions of her fans all over the world that she's taken sway over. Anyway, two other things I'm going to try to dive into here is, number one, concert as liturgy. I come from a liturgical tradition, Anglican, and the whole purpose of liturgy is for it to be the work of the people, for us to be involved in it. And I've noticed that in a lot of these concerts, it's almost like a full-blown liturgy. The people not only are, not only spectators, but they're also participants in a lot of these concerts and stuff, and a lot of these things happening. And a religion or a denomination or whatever, it has some form of a liturgy, whether you come from a liturgical tradition or not.
Yeah.
Ranging from a house church all the way up to high church, East EO, or even Latin Rite Roman Catholic. We all have a liturgy that we do. It's just whether you want to do the one the church has done for a long time or you want to make up your own. So that's another whole discussion. Anyways, yeah, there's this dynamic, and there's these mantras. There's these things that are said like over and over, different things like we have one on our show. I say eat the meat, and everybody out there can probably say spit out the bones. Yep. And we all do that, but there's a lot of them. That's an aspect of Taylor Swift. There's tons of them. There's symbols, what they call Easter eggs. You see those in movies. Like I just watched, I'm going to reveal my heathen card, but I just watched Deadpool. And just there was tons of Easter eggs all in through from him signing a kid's autograph and it says Ryan Reynolds instead of Deadpool. Just stuff like that. It's just fun stuff that they put in movies to give them symbolisms, and a lot of times they mean more than they do. But there's all kinds of that during their performances and in the liturgy and all that kind of stuff. The concerts are just basically big ceremonies. Now, I wouldn't say that they have scriptures or anything like that, but there are some unwritten rules sort of in the Swiftie community, and they're kind of secret. You have to be initiated into them, just like Fight Club was in the movie, or just like Masonry and stuff like that, like BT was talking about earlier about the different shibboleth, I think is a good biblical word for it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't know that story in the Old Testament, that was a way for a certain sect of I think was it Jews that said it wrong, and they knew that they weren't the right people. They said shibboleth.
I believe, it was in Judges when they warred. What was it? Was it the tribe of Benjamin? Yeah. It was one of the tribes, and they were trying to cross the fords of the Jordan to get back in or to escape, and they had a different way of pronouncing that word. They would say sibboleth.
Yeah.
So it was an easy way to identify them and slaughter them, basically.
Yeah, kind of like Spain. People think that Spanish Spain is totally different because of a monarch who had a lisp, and they use a lot of TH, and their Z's are totally different than Latin America. Similar thing, different dialect, but they have those. It's since come to mean like a password, or I have a picture of like a just imagine this: you're at a speakeasy and the window opens, and what's the password? And you have to say the password, and they close and they let you in. It's that kind of secret, like they used to do in Prohibition kind of type things. They have tons of online communities where they spread the gospel of Taylor Swift. And I'm going to share a story, and I can share the story because I'm not going to give you any details. But I have a friend who told me basically that they have a lady friend that went to a concert. And the guys know who I'm talking about. That the lady went to a concert. She's not a believer. She went to a concert, and she didn't want to come back to get counseling or to anything like that because she had a spiritual awakening at a Taylor Swift concert.
Mm-hmm.
And when you start throwing around language like that and start talking things like that, it gets spooky. It gets really, really scary. So what's the whole purpose of all this? Why are the elites concerned with creating all these celebrities that we idolize and all that? Because it's an easy way to manipulate the masses.
Mhm.
They can manipulate us. They can get Taylor Swift to talk about politics, even though she probably doesn't even know the difference between a Republican and a Democratic society.
Isn't all of her songs about bad relationships or relationships gone bad with men?
Oh yeah,
So she's
yeah,
probably not
almost
the best person to get male voting advice from.
yeah.
What man to vote for?
Well,
Gotcha.
yeah. In our we have a woman running for president, but she had to get that man in there because she knew she couldn't win it without a man in there. It's yeah, and her songs are I think it's probably, I don't know. Sandy says I embellish statistics, so y'all hear me. I know. But I'd say it's probably upwards in the 60 to 90% range that her songs are about breakups. It's so well known that that's the big joke.
That's right.
They're waiting for that what's that football player she's dating now? Or is she still dating him? I don't know. Anyway, they're waiting
They're waiting for him to get pregnant. Is that what this is?
Oh no, that's that meme. You saw that meme. That was so funny. Oh yeah, that was great. It was, what was it? White males for Kamala, and it was a picture of him pregnant with Taylor Swift. And that's classic.
Right.
For those of you out there, you need to find that meme. It's hilarious. But anyway, yeah, for my little closing thoughts on Tay-Tay, I just want to say that we can have a fan base. You can have people that follow you, but there's a real fine line to when it steps over into obsession, steps over into cultism, it steps over into devotion. And we have to be careful with our hearts. When I was in high school, man, I was a Doors fanatic, and I had a big, huge, like probably 3 foot by 4 foot poster of Jim Morrison over my bed, and I idolized him. I really did. I had to repent for it later. I still like the Doors, and then we found out all we found out about Laurel Canyon, and it really, really cemented my dislike for it. But I loved his writing. I wanted to be Jack Kerouacish like he was, and hippy dippy, and he wasn't that at all. That's what's so crazy, and that's what makes me wonder about like Taylor Swift and all these images that we see put out there. They're like filters we put on phones, except they're in a bigger way. They're filtered, and we only see what we're supposed to see. Anyway, well, that's my synopsis of Tay-Tay there. You have any questions or anything you want to bring up about her or anything? Because I'm going to talk at y'all, as y'all know I am. So
I was thinking, going back to what you just said, what is the line between fanboy and worship? That is something we all need to ask, because I think we all fanboy or fangirl about something. And where's the line? Where's the line there? It's a great question.
Yeah. I'm not really big on movie celebrities. I've met one. Matter of fact, one of my roommates in college got in a fight with Chris O'Donnell. He was in Jackson filming and got into a fight with him. It was during one of those movies. So I'm not a big fanboy when it comes to Hollywood-esque stuff, but now musicians is a different story. If you know my love for music and how it is for me to meet Steve Vai or to meet a dynamic guitar player, which the things I've found out lately about him, just anyway, I won't go there. But for me to meet, it would be really hard to keep that line between fanboy and slavish. Like, you want me to carry your bags for you? Do you want me to? And I know that sounds really extreme coming from a Christian minister, but it's like there's a mesmerizing spirit that's involved with all this. There's a sinister force that's involved with all this. And if we're not aware of that, we'll get sucked in. And that, Lindsay, I think would answer your question. It's that sinister force. It's that bewitchingness. It's that I would say demonic or dark angel type situation that puts a spell on people and pulls them in.
And generally, we don't see that. We need other people to see it and tell us. That's why community is important.
Yeah, the body of Christ is important for discernment. I had a professor, and I've said this a million times, and I'm going to say it a million more. I had a professor in college who basically worded it like this. He said, all it takes to make a heretic is a Bible in an empty room. And he's right. Think about it. We need the saints. That's why it's called the communion of the saints, and they have a vote in what we believe. Yep. Community is essential. All right, Lindsay, you're up next. Who are we talking about, bro?
We're talking about Mr. Leto, Jared Leto.
Jared Leto.
He's probably better known for his movies, but he uses his band, 30 Seconds to Mars. That's more the vehicle for the culty behavior for some reason. They're not that good.
Really?
I mean, they're okay. Like, they had one song back in the 2000s I kind of liked from Yesterday. But yeah, it seems to be that's where you see a lot of the esoteric imagery. That's where you see a lot of the culty behavior is in his band. Born in 1971, and he's a Southerner by birth in Bossier City, Louisiana.
That's right down the road from us.
Shreveport, yeah. And his mom was kind of here we go, Air Force brat. His grandfather, William Lee Metrojean, was in the Air Force. That's about all I could find out about him.
Yeah.
But that's an important an important.
Yep.
His grandfather, his grandfather was Air Force. His mom was a hippie. We got all
fascinating
the Laurel Canyon-y ingredients here for a terrible stew.
Well, people don't realize either that the Air Force is not about planes. The Air Force is primarily an intelligence agency. It's a military intelligence agency. And people do fly planes in it, but it's mostly intelligence. And yep.
So the earliest memories I have of him was My So-Called Life, the TV show he did with Claire Danes. Yeah. He's like this dreamy kind of outcast, but really good-looking love interest on there for Claire Danes, and I think that was most people's introduction to him. I think he was in a few things right before that, but yeah, he started doing movies later. He was in Fight Club, obviously. He plays, interestingly, this very devoted member of the Fight Club who gets his face just caved in by Edward Norton. And he was in, what was that movie? Requiem for a Dream. I've seen it. It's a really trippy, weird movie that's right up his alley.
You know what's interesting, though? Fight Club is actually a cult classic movie, interestingly enough.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Requiem for a Dream. He plays, it's just this movie about people who you see drugs kind of destroy their lives. It wasn't as deep to me when I watched it. Maybe if I watch it again, I'd see more. He was in Alexander, of course, where he plays one of Alexander's sort of right-hand men, and they kind of hint throughout maybe a lover. But yeah, that's one side of him. But the acting is important. Don't get me wrong. First of all, he's done some good movies. I like Fight Club, but the acting is important because he uses a really extreme form of method acting. Now, most people associate method acting, and this is the important part, is just you stay in character and you go to great lengths to look the right way, losing or gaining weight. He gained a lot of weight in the movie where he played the guy who tried to assassinate Reagan. I can't ever remember his name. I should have written it down. Hinckley, yeah.
Robert, Hinckley. I don't remember that movie. What movie was that? I vaguely see when he does that. When he gains weight, I don't really recognize him.
Well,
John Hinckley Jr. I think maybe.
Yeah. I know. I don't know if that's right, but yeah, he gained a lot of weight and plays this possibly sort of Manchurian Candidate type character in there. I think that's important.
Yeah. Well, what about the rumors that we hear about when he does his method acting that everybody around him he drives them crazy?
Yeah.
Is that a true thing?
Well, when
Like
he
with
played the
Joker
Joker, he
and
was sending people
yeah,
used condoms, and some of it he said, "Oh, it was just a joke. Oh, I joked about that. I didn't actually do that." But yeah, that's something I encountered a lot. It sounds like a lot of people in Hollywood don't really like him.
yeah, yeah.
He's not a super fun person to be around. There's a clip of him at a concert admonishing a guy for not standing up, calling him out.
That's
Boy,
crazy.
yeah, I'd get my
Was it one
money
of his
back.
concerts or
Yeah,
just
it's
somewhere?
32nd to Mars. Yeah, from the
Okay.
stage, he calls a guy out.
Right.
Well, I've noticed an uptick in that in a lot of stars, from Motley Crue to Guns N' Roses. All these old guys are getting crotchety and they're like yelling at
Yeah.
people from the stage.
Get
70
off
year old,
my lawn.
yeah.
Yeah. You bought your ticket. Do whatever you want. Okay,
Yep.
real quick because it's bothering me. Chapter 27 was the movie, and it's Mark David Chapman.
Oh.
Who was
Yeah,
Hinckley?
he killed Lennon. I'm sorry, I'm getting my assassinations mixed up here. But
Oh,
yeah, he
okay.
killed
Yeah.
Lennon and was
Yeah.
obsessed with The Catcher in the Rye, and
Yep.
so
That
yeah, it's
story.
interesting that he would take that role. But yeah, he uses really extreme method acting, and there's questions about extreme method acting and what effects it can have. Can it cause some sort of fragmentation, some sort of DID type fragmentation and
Disassociation.
depart? Could someone do that to themselves deliberately? It wouldn't surprise me if he did that.
Well, if somebody can do it to you, then you can probably do it to yourself if you
Oh
figure
yeah.
out a way. All it takes is trauma.
So yeah, extreme method acting. This is a tough one for me. One of my favorite actors, and somebody, to be honest, I can fanboy about a little bit. Daniel Day-Lewis does the same thing. He'll
Yeah,
take
but
a few years to prepare for a role, and he's probably not as extreme, and he's kind of stepped away from it. I wonder if it finally just took so much of a toll on him. But yeah,
well, somebody out there was really obnoxious about it. I know we're chasing a rabbit here, but there was somebody that I was it Leto? Is that the one
he
that's the
is
one that
obnoxious about it.
yeah.
But also, Back to the Future, the original guy that was supposed to play
Oh yeah.
McFly, and he was
Yeah.
so obnoxious. He was doing that. He was
Yeah.
staying in character off screen, and just he drove the guy that played Biff up a wall, and they basically just fired him because he was being so obnoxious and just wasn't good for them. I mean, yeah, who but Michael J. Fox could have played that role. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. But yeah, he's an example of it. Marlon Brando did it, was famous for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, it's just there's questions about what this can do to the psyche when you when you alter reality for yourself and such.
Well, we can examine that by looking at another individual who played the Joker.
Oh
Like
yeah, I didn't even think
Heath
about that.
Ledger.
Yeah,
And
Heath Ledger.
Heath
Yeah,
Ledger would get into the character. There's a lot of evidence that showed that he did it in his trailer, his hotel room, where he was in his own mind the
yeah.
Joker.
And I don't know how true it is, but I'd heard somewhere that maybe Jack Nicholson might have given him a little warning. Hey, be careful with this character.
That's the rumor.
That's
It
interesting.
gets in your head.
That's another whole podcast, man, right there.
Right.
You couple that with that stuff out there, I don't know how real it is about Nephilim being clowns, but
Yeah.
anyway.
But anyway,
Sidebar.
yeah. So yeah, that's the acting part of it. But yeah, 30 Seconds to Mars, they were formed with his brother Shannon. They're the only constant members. It's kind of more the vehicle for the cult, I would say. And they say there's a T-shirt. Yes, this is a cult. I think
Really?
they're wanting that to come off halfway as tongue in cheek, but there's
Well,
also kind of this. But is it really? They kind of
Yeah.
talk out of both sides of their mouths about it. And it's interesting that the fans are called the echelon. That's a military word. It can just mean a unit, a military formation. It comes from some French word that meant ladder. In the Napoleonic era, they would everyone would line up sort of cattywampus to the person in front of them. But anyway, it's interesting that he uses this very sort of military sounding term for his fans, I think. So yeah, there's the echelon. There's the events he's been doing since the 2010s, initially called Camp Mars, and they did it in Malibu, where it started out just kind of this adult summer camp. You paid money to go there and hang out. You heard there was a concert every night, and there was archery and all the summer camp stuff. And initially, they were more kind of less closed off from the fans. They would ride around in golf carts and talk to the fans. At some point, that morphed into this event called Mars Island, where he didn't own the whole island. That's kind of the rumor. He has a resort on it, but it's an island off the coast of Croatia, where this is where some of the real him dressing in white robes, leading yoga classes, walking around and just being looks like worshipped. I mean, just look it up, Mars Island. Look at some of the photos. Just presenting himself as this kind of guru type character. And there's a hashtag he uses, "You wouldn't understand." So again, that's that insider sort of we esotericism.
Exactly
we understand this, but you plebes outside
wink,
don't.
Wink, nod, nod.
Yeah, it's prevalent in anything like that. It's like, we know something you don't know, and we're gonna flash it in plain sight. But do you really know? Is it really true?
Yeah. Next, there's the symbols around the band.
Yeah,
and the origin of those symbols. He has said in several interviews, he's mentioned this book or manuscript called the Argus Apocryphex. So I was excited. All right, I'm going to look up. Well, I couldn't find it anywhere, and no one else online seen. I looked in this. There's this live journal, several sites where people just kind of like the Reddit thing. There are several Tumblrs, old Tumblrs I found where people just obsess. Often echelon members obsess over the symbolism. I couldn't find this book, but the meaning of it is interesting. Sometimes he claims that they got the band name from it. Sometimes he said they got it from some writer named James Glick. Just something about because of technology and human evolution, we could be 30 seconds from Mars at any point. Other times he says he got it from this Argus Apocryphex. Okay, so I looked up the meaning. It's like Latinized Greek, but Argus, the Argus part, most likely refers to a giant. He was sort of muscle for the goddess Hera. He was 100-eyed. Argos.
Yeah.
Or Argo. Yeah. He was kind of muscle for the goddess Hera. And it was a giant with many eyes, this sort of watcher type imagery there. And Apocryphex just means hidden. It's where same word that Apocrypha comes from. So we got this sort of hidden Titan imagery here that he wants.
Hidden giant.
And he sends his fan on wild goose chases to figure out hashtags and just stuff in the album artwork where he tells them, find the Argus Apocryphex. So yeah, I think he made it up. That's my opinion. And it's just playing with people's minds. You could argue, oh, he's just he's just screwing with people. We all do that. Well, when your fans who spend thousands of dollars on you, you start screwing with them at a point, it's not funny anymore. You're playing with people's minds. So some of the symbols that he claims to have gotten from this book. First of all, there's a Latin slogan. This is interesting. Provehito in altum. Now, this can mean, that word altum in particular has two meanings. It can mean the depths, the deep.
Yeah.
So we got abyss language. It can also mean the heights. So provehito in altum means launch or go forth into the deep or the heights. So either way, into the heights, we got this almost Babel or perhaps Luciferian, I'm going to ascend to the heights thing.
Yeah.
But if you translate it the deep, you got this, I'm going to go into the abyss or perhaps into Sheol thing. So either way, we've got interesting imagery there. They have a symbol of the phoenix, which they call Mithra for some reason. Which is an Iranian god. They have this pyramid symbol with a line going through the top. So on one level, that's the alchemical symbol for air. You flip it upside down, it's the alchemical symbol for earth. But so again, you got height and depth there. But air, I don't know. I thought about the prince and power of the air. That's the first thing that came to my mind there.
Well, I just thought about elementals, the different elementals: fire, water, air.
Yeah,
that's significance in the occult. Yeah.
And obviously there's the Egyptian, the bin. It's a sacred mound that emerges from the abyss, and some of the different, because there's not one. There's different Egyptian creation myths, and they often will have a different god as sort of the self-creating creator god. But there's this bin stone, this mound that emerges out of the abyss as one of the first acts of the creation. And some people think that this capstone pyramid points to that. So yeah. And then there's just the 4 symbols that supposedly represent the band name. There's kind of, it looks like 2 interlocking 3s, which a lot of people say means 30, but really 2 interlocking 3s, wouldn't that be 33?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. The Masonic and occultic number we come across again and again and again. The way they interlock kind of almost looks like a 0, so maybe, but yeah, it's still, you got 2 3s. That's 33. The second symbol is sort of, it looks like this sort of wheel or propeller-like looking thing that looks like it's going counterclockwise. That's been interpreted as seconds. The next symbol looks like the Roman numeral 3. But apparently you're supposed to look at the negative space there. It's usually Roman numeral 3 in black, but the negative space is a Roman numeral 2. So that's just supposed to mean 2, but TO instead. 30 seconds to Mar. And then the last symbol is a circle with 2 dots on the outside. That's supposed to represent Mars and its 2 moons, Phobos and Deimos, which mean like fear and terror. So yeah, honestly, it's so, I tried to look up meanings for those different symbols, and the 33 was the only one that really jumped out to me, the Masonic. And another thing about that air symbol in the York Rite of Masonry, they have a similar pyramid with a line going through the top for their second cryptic Masonry. They're a little bit different. I think they have like these 3 sort of levels you go through, and the second one has that with some other symbols in the middle there. So yeah, a lot of esoteric symbolism. And again, Jared Leto's really ambiguous about it. If you watch interviews, he says it comes from this book that doesn't exist. And that's a part of cult leaders. They don't want to just deceive the outside. They got to deceive their followers too.
Yeah.
And send them on these wild goose chases. So yeah, next, of course, he bought Lookout Mountain, the old Air Force base,
Laurel Canyon,
and he is aware of its history. He's Wall Street Journal article. He talks about there's all sorts of things about the moon landing being fake there. He mentioned it on the Conan O'Brien show, so he's aware of its history. So the question is, why would he buy this? He didn't just, I need a mansion. Here's one. Really crappy looking former military base. I think I'll get that one. He didn't just buy this because, this one's a good price and I'll buy it.
He's probably drawn to it.
There's something about this really jived with him. Of course, it's got the checkered floors throughout.
Yep.
And just in Met Gala, just his fashion, he usually represents Gucci at that Met Gala event, and just outlandish stuff. One year it was Catholic themed, and he wears like a priest's stole with lion heads on it.
Did he wear a cassock? Did he wear a cassock too? The black,
yeah, and a crown, golden laurel on his head. So he's presenting himself kind of as a priest, but also kind of this messianic figure. He's got a crown and line of the tribe of Judah. There's another one where he wears a long flowing scarlet robe and carries a mock-up of his own head, very lifelike.
Wow.
Y'all's guess is as good as mine, but no, I was thinking a little bit. For some reason, this came to my mind: the Scarlet Beast in Revelation 17, and one of its heads was wounded. I don't know. What do y'all think about that one? What is that? Carrying around your own head?
Yeah, that's interesting. You think about Greek mythology, the only person that carried around a head was Perseus, and he carried around the head of Medusa.
Yeah,
So there could be something to that of him
yeah,
bewitching, because that goes back to that
yeah,
basilisk wording. Yeah, I'm just speculating here. That's what I want to throw out. But sometimes these, like we always talk about in every episode, we have evidence, but we don't have foredrawn conclusions. We can't prove it, but there's a lot of evidence, and we don't want to get too far down the rabbit
yeah.
hole with it. So let me ask you a question, Lindsay. So what do you think about in your research of Leto? Do you think this is just all a big sham like Motley Crue was back in the 80s with the devil stuff, just to put on a show to get publicity? Or do you think that there's something more to this Jared stuff?
I think there's something more to it,
Yeah.
because I think the sham part is a part of being a cult leader.
Yeah.
Motley Crue, yeah, they were a young band and wanted to get noticed, but he's already known, and he doesn't need this band. His movies have made him his fortune
Yeah.
already, but yet he uses it as a vehicle to control people
Mm.
and make a lot of money off of them. He doesn't need the money again, but so yeah, I think he really likes the control. He likes the power. He likes moving the masses, and yeah, I think there's something more to it than just pranksterism.
That reminds me of something I forgot to interject with Taylor. And if you don't know this, she is worth billions of dollars. Not billion, billions.
Wow.
And I think the money is, I don't think they do it for the money, but I think the money is used is like it should be, is a tool, but it's their tool for power.
Yeah, yeah,
Yep.
but yeah, these events obviously cost a lot of money, where you go and get a little attention from the band, hopefully. And one more thing I want to mention: his name, Jared Leto. Now, his last name comes from his adopted dad. His biological dad left the family soon after he was born and committed suicide, Tony Bryant. But his adopted dad's last name was Leto. So I don't think this was a human thing. I think this was probably, it's not impossible that it was, that they orchestrated all this, but this may be more of sinister forces orchestrating things. His last name sounds a lot like the Greek goddess Leto, the mother of Apollo and Artemis.
Interesting.
And his name, Jared, is Hebrew for descent.
Yeah. Yeah.
You put it together and you got this sort of descent of the goddess thing going on. And of course, he likes to present himself as some sort of, I mean, that laurel he was wearing looked very Greek god like at the Met Gala, and trying to make himself look like some sort of sun king.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was interesting, that his name gives you this imagery, this descent of Apollo's mother there, and what that could mean, sort of as far as return of the gods.
Yeah. I mean, what are you supposed to do with all this? When, if you had one or two things, it'd be one thing. But when you have all this stuff, and we're trying really hard not to do pareidolia, you have all this stuff kind of stacks up. It just begins to say, I don't know if this is a coincidence anymore.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But yeah, very interesting.
Well, BT, who is your guy? We saved the best for last, maybe? I don't know. This is the one that's going to surprise everybody, though. I guarantee it. Maybe.
Right. So we're going to talk about Elvis Presley, the king of rock. Yeah, and this is an interesting dive into Elvis. So here's the deal with Elvis. My father's mother was a big fan of his. She had the Velvet Elvis posters.
My grandmother was too.
These things had such a massive amount of desirability. You would go to flea markets, and if you saw one, people would be hawking hundreds of dollars over just to buy one of these crushed velvet images of Elvis. She had all the LPs, and they were all kept in very nice containers and preserved. Much the way somebody might save a collectible item. They were definitely well kept and definitely worth the value, whatever they are today. And looking into Elvis and looking into his fans and looking into the growth, the outgrowth of what had happened with him. We're talking about a guy, he was born in Mississippi, he moved to Memphis when he was 13, gets involved in the scene. He wasn't exactly a somebody from the ground floor. He had some good musical talent. He was a good musician. He sang gospel songs. There's that connection there. And a lot of people still to this day consider him probably a Christian man who died following Christ. But as we get into that, we might learn that his view of Christ was quite a bit different than what we would consider biblical Christianity. Yeah. Elvis gets his massive popularity when he appears in a movie in the 1950s, late 50s. And it was before he went off to be drafted into the army. And he serves the United States country honorably, and he does well. He gets a deferment because they were finishing up filming a movie, but he goes off and he serves the military as he was assigned to be with a tank division, but he ends up doing basically intelligence.
Interesting.
Gathering and information. They kept him clearly aside from any possible combat. Yeah. After all, he's famous.
They did the same thing with Jimmy Stewart too, I think. Yeah, they gave him desk duty, right. Desk jockey stuff, yeah.
And a lot of information comes about from Elvis after the fact, after he dies. There's a handful of books. One's which you can find these books today. I mean, they're going to probably cost you a pretty penny, but there's a book. It's written by a guy named Steve Dunleavy, and he wrote the book Elvis, What Happened. And it's three of his closest companions tell the shocking and bizarre story. Red West, Sonny West, and Dave Hebler. And then there's another book. It's called If I Can Dream, and it's a book written by Larry Geller. And there's a lot of background information about who Elvis, I should say what Elvis was. Something that's stood out to me was that Elvis believed from his childhood that he was in connection with entities, unseen entities, and he believed one of which was his brother, who actually had died at birth, his brother Jesse. And he believed that Jesse was talking to him and encouraging him and getting him motivated and bringing him his success. And he talks about this frequently to his close bodyguards, who he actually renames and calls the Memphis Mafia. And in endearment terms, he calls them my disciple, which is quite an interesting idea for a man who was as well read as he was. He read a lot of books, many of which were by individuals of Eastern mysticism, and by Eastern mysticism, I specifically mean Indian mysticism. So he was into the yogis, he was into Tao, or Tao, depending on how you pronounce it. And then he got himself into reading interesting books about Christ that were basically Gnostic in origin, to the point where Elvis basically says, hey, we're all Christ, and I've come to this earth as a Christ. And it gets to the point in Elvis's life where he's honestly believing a lot of these things that he talks about being Christ. Larry Geller writes that he saw, hundreds of concert goers. Hundreds of concert goers would bring sick or crippled children, and they would rush up on the stage and they'd ask Elvis, please touch my baby and heal my baby.
Wow.
And that's quite an interesting idea.
Jeez.
I never knew that. See? Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, it was even in his mind, right? Even in Elvis's mind, his life was basically being directed by these divine entities. The Brotherhood of the Masters, which is a pretty common term if you're into theosophy, or these illuminated beings that
ascended masters.
The ascended masters, all of these big words that are coming from people like Blavatsky or L. Ron Hubbard, etc. at the time. And he believed that these enlightened entities had existed from time immemorial. And he truly felt that he was basically chosen by them in his popularity to now be a modern day savior, a Christ.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really interesting because whenever he mentioned Jesus to his disciples, he would just say, now, one of the things was, now Jesus, he was getting it on with Mary Magdalene. That's obviously not in the Bible, but it's truly what was going on. And they traveled together everywhere. And yeah, you clearly see that Elvis was buying into this
Last Temptation of Christ
Gnostic
stuff. Yeah.
gospel. Yeah.
I remember that movie.
And he genuinely believed he was a prophet. The Sonny West and his brother, they were all his chosen disciples. And they even admit that he had this hypnotic power over them. And there was a time when there was somebody, this guy, Mike Stone. Elvis wanted Mike Stone dead for some reason. And he went to Sonny West and said, hey, here's my rifle. It was either a Tommy gun or a AK-47 or something. He says, here's my gun. Maybe even a service rifle. And he says, hey, here's my gun. I want you to go and kill Mike Stone. And Sonny West is like, look, I'm no killer, man. And so he kept pushing that away and pushing that off. And all of these details that come out about Elvis, about who he was behind the scenes and what kind of individual he was, to bust the image, to pop the balloon of this cult that he had. And there's still fans today who think quite highly of him. There was a video I had watched recently of a young woman, a handful of years ago, who said, pray to Elvis Presley that whatever it is that's bothering you, and you'll be healed from it. And for that to exist even today, 50 years after the man had passed, is quite remarkable. And it tells me, after talking about Taylor Swift and talking about Jared Leto, there's even people like David Bowie. It's all these individuals out there, and there's no doubt whatsoever in my mind that celebrity culture is basically the new opium for the masses.
That's an interesting way to put that. Yep.
We're in a world that's filled with uncertainty, hardships, and people are just clinging to the lives of these celebrities as if a way to escape their own realities. And so we see worship at the altar of fame, seeking solace in the glamour, the drama of people that honestly we'll never meet. But,
yeah,
like any opiate, this addiction will numb people. It numbs them to the truths that we should actually be facing in our day-to-day lives. It numbs us to the realities of our day-to-day lives. And so what happens is these people are losing themselves in the stories of the famous, and they're forgetting that we need to write our own.
It always takes more too, BT. Your first dose is your best hit. After that, it takes more and more and more. And two, we need to factor that into the whole opiate thing as well.
Yeah, Elvis was addicted to amphetamines. He got addicted to amphetamines when he was in the army. Things to keep yourself awake. Yeah, I can understand that, being a serviceman. But towards the end of his life, there was a lot of people saying that he was addicted to cocaine. Well, no, actually, he was addicted to opiates, specifically prescription medications, and much like another individual who might have died from medication overdose, Michael Jackson, king of pop. And there's a celebrity cult. But anyways.
Yeah, we forgot about him.
But for Elvis, the man was quite peculiar, quite perverse. He met Priscilla when she was 14 years old. And they remained together from the time she was 14 for 5 more years before the media pressed him and his people pressed him to marry her.
Well, and it's pretty common knowledge that he liked young girls too. That's what he.
Yeah, even when he was married to Priscilla, he would just keep her around when he needed her or wanted her or wanting something from her, and there was no end to his hot lunches, as he would call them. And there's a recording of him on a hot mic talking about having a hot lunch, and he was saying, they're like, hey, there's a mic up there. recording that, and the first thing he started doing was singing about Jesus.
Mm.
What a friend we have in Jesus.
Wow.
Yeah.
And
mockery, to say the least.
and two, y'all, think about this. Think about the fact that Elvis Presley is as American as apple pie, y'all. You hear him mention
that was the image that we wanted. We went from the 50s into the hippies. Yep. And that's exactly what he was designed and organized to do, is he moved us from the 50s into the free love era of the 60s, the 50s to the hippies, like I said. And that's what that drive was, a sexual revolution. Nobody would gyrate or move like he did with a microphone, and it was quite an interesting ritualized sex act on stage where music and concerts are liturgy.
Yeah. And movies too. Movies, form of liturgy as well. Yep. Worship acts.
So yeah, I knew about that he had dabbled a little bit in Eastern mysticism. I can remember seeing it on some movies, made-for-TV movies about him, but I didn't know the level of just this getting into the weird Christ consciousness and stuff.
Well, he was also involved in martial arts and karate too, right? That probably brought a lot of that too. Yeah, I remember.
That's probably where he was involved in the Tao.
Because I remember growing up, my grandmother was like yours. I mean, everything. They lived in Memphis, and they go wait for him when he was in town. Lines of people right outside of Graceland, and I've been to Graceland like 6 or 7 times. And that's one of the joys of being from Memphis. But it's just insane, just the opulence for that time period. And but I remember an image of him having a black karate uniform on.
Yeah. Yep, I'm definitely not going to be putting on blue suede shoes anytime soon. I'll tell you that.
So what's the meaning behind that? What do you mean by that?
I was going to say, don't leave us hanging there.
Don't leave you hanging with the blue suede shoes. Well, there's a pretty good song. There's a song about where he put on his blue suede shoes and he boarded the plane. Elvis was known for wearing blue suede shoes when he did his singing in Vegas, and it was one of those things that you would know Elvis by his shoes.
Is it like the red shoes are nowadays, sort of? The whole red shoe phenomenon that a lot of these politicians and stuff read, is it the same vein? You familiar with that?
Well, there's usually symbolism behind a lot of things, and we can probably find that in the occult meanings. But in the following of someone like Elvis, his fandom idolized and dressed. That was the drive. One of the things that we spoke about in our Laurel Canyon episode early on was the drive of Hollywood and telling us what to wear, what to buy. And it was important. One of the major questions that gets asked of any famous person is, whose shoes are you wearing? Whose shirts do you have on?
Yep. And we've talked about Jared Leto and Gucci. So, this just goes back to where we started. This circles back around to even back to Laurel Canyon, that these people are purveyors of culture. And and the culture that they're trying to purvey is not a culture that we want to be purveyed. I'm not one of these let them fall in the ocean and all that kind of stuff. That's just not Christ-like. But people do need to know that it was really hard for me in different circles, different artists to know that there is an agenda, and we don't know. I tell people this all the time. If you know who they are not in charge, and so we don't know who's in charge, what the agenda is, and I don't want to speculate about end times. It might not even be an end time scenario yet. It might be a lot more to it, but they are definitely. Yeah, it's definitely Hunger Game-ish is what it gets to me. I really see that, and I'll kind of end with this, and I'll let y'all have the final word, and I really will let y'all have the final word because I never do. Anyway, I saw a meme today that Sandy sent was really good. It was the who's the guy that was trying to blow up the Parliament? What was his name? Guy Fawkes. And in that movie they had with the guy was wearing the Guy Fawkes mask. What was it called?
V for Vendetta.
V for Vendetta. Okay. Anyway, it was a meme where he was talking about, I think, something Elon Musk tweeted or whatever you do, X'd or whatever now, about in Star Wars, you were for the Resistance, and and all these different, named off all these movies, you're for the resistance, then why in real life are you not for the resistance? It was a really powerful meme, but that's what it comes back to. And I think, too, we have to, I guess, depending on where you come from theologically, where I come from theologically, we have to develop a way to be able to deal with this. I do believe in a just war. I'm not a pacifist, but I don't buy this. Let's all get in a cave with a bunch of bullets and shoot anybody that comes near us because we're good Christians. I don't see the Spirit of Christ in that at all. But there is a point to be aware and to know what's going on and to see through this stuff and not be deceived by this stuff and to pray about this stuff.
Well, I would just say, reiterate what I said earlier, man. Watch who you're fanboying or fangirling over.
Good word.
Because the line and bewitchment, you're not going to be able to notice it by that point. You're going to need someone else to show you.
That's essential. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, we set out to, we're talking about the cult of celebrity. That's the aim. And we gave 3 different individuals' lives to talk about this strange phenomenon where we elevate people to godlike status. You know, we follow their every move. We dress like them. We talk like them. We dissect every single word they say in their song, in their interviews. It's as if their lives are somehow more important or meaningful than our own.
Yeah. Yep.
It's as if we're looking for something, maybe some kind of validation or glimpse into the extraordinary in our mundane existence for some, our day-to-day sloggery or whatever. But what we're really doing is losing ourselves in the process and forgetting that the real heroes, the real stories, are often found far, far from the glitz, the glamour of the red carpet.
And then the dangerous canyons of Laurel Canyon. Yep. Well, cool. Thank you guys for doing this. We're going to do this again, and we're going to keep drilling in and keep going. Thank you for y'all's contributions. Y'all are fabulous and brilliant, and I'm so honored to be on a podcast with you two guys. So, adios, everybody.
Likewise.
Yep.
Enjoyed it.
Thanks for listening and supporting us. And remember, stay naturally supernatural.